So, hi everyone, welcome to Study That, Doing This, a show for graduates and soon-to-be graduates who are looking at a non-traditional career path potentially. My name is Tam, and I studied linguistics, ended up working in tech. And back in 2016, when I was about to graduate, it would have been great to know that so many people out there end up working in a totally different field than they originally studied. And so that's why I'm doing this show, actually, for people who are just about to graduate or who have already graduated and are not quite sure what to do. And so yeah, I'm interviewing all these professionals, which brings me to today's guest. Welcome, Denise Roy Desrosiers.
Yes.
Hi, thanks for being here and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
So Denise, let's kick this off with like a little bit about you. So tell us about yourself, where you're from originally, where you live, what your hobbies are, that kind of thing.
Okay. I'm originally from the US. I come from Minnesota, and I now live in New York City. I spend my spare time looking after my new puppy, pandemic puppy, and I volunteer as the co-MD of the New York chapter of Girls in Tech. So
Cool.
It's an organization that helps to put an end to gender diversity or increase gender diversity in the tech field.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what you do basically like in your spare time, but what do you do for a living?
I work in a global bank in the compliance department. I do process efficiency. So I'm the head of process efficiency and controls at GFS US. So that's Group Financial Security. It's a department within compliance that specializes in US sanctions.
Okay.
And so what I do there is basically help the teams to help themselves. We take their day-to-day processes and we analyze those to see if there's anything that they can whittle out to make their processes more smooth. And we also help them document as much as possible to help them stay safe if they're audited, and we can prove that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Interesting. Okay. And can you talk a little bit about your day-to-day tasks? So what does a typical workday look like for you?
Sure. Basically, what we're looking at are operational controls. So we do a lot of reporting. I think a lot of things like maintenance of procedures, trying to interpret procedures for people so that they seem a little bit more accessible.
Right.
And we're also analyzing processes a lot. So understanding data flows, understanding who does what and when, and making decisions based on that.
Okay, interesting. And so I know that you studied a totally different field. Can you talk a little bit about how you went, or what you studied first of all, and then how you kind of went from there to what you do now?
Sure. So I studied fine art printmaking at the College of St. Benedict in Minnesota. And the reason I studied art is because when I went into college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think a lot of people get advice about doing what they love and following their passion.
Right.
And that's some of the advice that I received at the time too. So I was moderately good at art, I guess, at the time. And so I was interested by it. I thought it was something that I could really get into. I didn't know if I wanted to work specifically doing the art, but I wanted to be around it. I love beauty and I love creativity. So it was something that I was really drawn to.
That's really interesting. And were you, so you did something you loved, but as you were completing your studies, were you already sort of thinking about jobs that are a little more related to art, or were you already thinking about completely other things you could do with your degree?
Actually, I think I was still kind of unsure about a job when I left. I knew I wanted to at least be around it. I thought maybe an art and like working in an art gallery would be something I'd be interested in. So that's what I pursued after graduation.
Can you talk a little bit about your first steps? Like, was it an internship,
Sure.
or how did you land your first jobs?
I applied for an opening that I saw in the newspaper at the time. It was a newspaper.
Traditional.
And yeah. And I interviewed and got the job. I had no experience. I had just come out of college, and they were looking for a gallery assistant in a gallery in London. So
Oh,
um,
cool.
yeah, I got the job. It was very
Nice.
exciting. Yeah.
And how long did you stay in London?
I was in London for about 3 years.
Wow, okay. And
Yeah.
so at this point you're still using your
Still working in
degree.
art.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, was there a certain like point in time when you realized I want to switch it up, want to do something else, or what happened exactly?
Well, I guess to fully explain it, I'll give you a little bit more background.
Yeah.
I left England, and I lived in the south of France for a short time, and I didn't have a work visa. So
Oh.
when I was there, I did kind of odd jobs. I was tutoring. I taught drawing to a little girl. It was a kind of a transitory period transition, and I eventually came to live in Montreal, Canada, and there. I was kind of starting fresh. I had this gap in my resume. I had worked in an art gallery. And so the first step was to, try to find a job in art. And I quickly realized that the art gallery scene in Montreal is a bit smaller than London. And I decided that I needed a job. I needed money. So I started applying for more like administration type roles because I thought I'd be qualified for that.
Mhm.
So that first step was kind of out of necessity, and it wasn't a plan.
Okay. So it's more like I got to make some money doing something and
Yeah.
not a huge art scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so I assume it wasn't the amazing role you have now. I assume it was more sort of an entry level position.
Very much an entry level position. Yes. So
Can you
I
talk a little bit about like how you went from, no experience, first kind of job in administration to where
mhm.
you are now?
Sure. It was quite the journey. I think that I started in this entry level job. The next step was my manager at the time said, "Look, Denise, if you ever want to be a manager, you need to go into sales." So I went into sales. Well, I petitioned him to have a job as a sales rep on the road. And it was probably the hardest job I've ever had in my life. It was terrible. I was
Oh.
speaking in my second language to people who didn't want to hear my accent and trying to sell a product to people who didn't have the money to buy it. So it was quite a challenge. But what I learned from that job in sales was that I could do things that I had no experience doing, and I could learn new things and push myself. And I think that was probably the the foundation of what came next, and the fact that I kind of realized that I could train myself to do other things, and it
Mhm.
wasn't that I was going to be an admin assistant for the rest of my life.
Right.
So from there, I decided I'd like to move jobs and industries, and I decided to do one thing at a time. So I tried to move industries first to be an admin assistant in finance, and that was also terrible because I hated stapling things. Never been a fan of that. And so I slowly learned about project management, and I was hired by the company I work for now, actually, in Montreal.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I started my project management journey there, and I worked in an IT department in Montreal for BNP Paribas, and I've now, since then moved to the U.S., back to my home country, and I've transitioned from the IT department to compliance. But all along the way, I think taking, like I did in the beginning, taking a piece of what I was doing, continuing that, and changing one other thing.
Yeah.
So the if you're trying to change too much at one time, I feel like it's it's hard to make yourself look credible. But if you can train yourself on one thing and just do kind of side steps, it's a lot easier to feel really confident when you're applying for the job because you know how to do that piece.
Right. Right. That
So
makes sense.
yeah, so it's been quite a step-by-step journey.
And do you feel that now in compliance, are there some transferable skills that you take with you from your art studies that you can use in your day to
Mm.
day?
Good question. I'd say yes. There's an element of creativity, I think, in most jobs, and I don't think that people often associate creativity and compliance. When they hear it, it sounds pretty boring.
Not my first thought.
No, but I think that there's, I mean, especially with the process efficiency piece, there's always an element of how can we make things better, and in order to get there, you need a little bit of creativity, a little bit of thinking out of the box in order to start those conversations and look at an issue or a problem in a different way.
Right.
So there's that. I think probably in the art days during our studio classes, we had a session called critique. So basically you'd put the piece of work that you'd done on the wall, and all of your colleagues or your classmates would stand around and they'd say, or they'd challenge you on this piece and like, well, why did you make that decision? And I really
scary.
don't like that. So I feel like this like kind of justifying your decisions and being proud of what you've done and understanding why.
Yeah.
This is also a piece that I took with me from my art days.
Oh, that's really interesting. And the thought to me really scary, but yeah. So now you're confident, I assume, in like arguing for your decisions in front of
I feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
More comfortable. It's never comfortable, but more.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it is, I mean, you probably had to argue a little bit when you were hired there. I mean, even so long ago, but you had a degree in art and not like in finance or controlling or something. If you could go back and do it all over again, like knowing what you know now, would you still do the same fine art, or would you maybe already go into finance?
I guess it's a difficult question because knowing myself at the time, there's no way. But I don't know. I feel like kind of part of the reason I'm here today is because I learned how to do things on my own, and I learned how to push through the difficulty. And I don't know if I would have learned that if I would have done a career plan from the beginning and laid something out step by step. There's the part of my personality that was very resistant to that at the time too, but I think that I mean the challenges have really taught me how to get ahead and how to, I guess, stand up for myself in a world where no one else is standing up for you. You got to do it yourself.
So true. Is your just out of interest, is this a unique career path for someone in compliance, or do you actually have lots of colleagues who studied something completely different?
I have one or two. I think it's very unusual. Most people have studied finance or compliance. Most of the people who I work with. When I was in the IT department, it was the same. A lot of people coming from technical backgrounds.
Yeah. And did they require you to do any, like, I don't know, night school or extra classes or something?
Not at all. No. Most of what I've learned on the job. And so I can take those skills to the next job.
Great. Okay. Oh, that's really cool. So they're willing to take a chance on people and really teach you the job on the job.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's been a complete full teach ever. That's the, I guess, the point of the slow career path, where I couldn't jump into a job like this from the beginning. There's no way. But because I've learned a little bit along the way, I have the skills to do what I do today.
Right. And can you speak to some of the strongest assets that people with a degree in art bring to the table for potential employers? This could be in compliance, but also in other fields. What do you feel are some of your strongest assets?
I think that people coming from art background, I guess, two things. One, if a person has made the decision to study art in school and spend time and money to study art and then go into something else, I think you know something about that person automatically, that they're a self-starter and that they have what it takes to learn new skills. They have a curiosity that is potentially different than some other candidates. And when I'm hiring, that's something I look for. I look for employees who can learn something on the job, because most of what we do every day during, our work hours is not something that's we learned in school. Even if we did come from a finance background or a compliance background, it's
Right.
There are things that are, just for that job and specific to that job.
Right, of course.
So I would say if I were to pick someone who'd be really successful in my team, I would say that they should have some sort of curiosity. And I think that that's something that the art world or people who studied art might have.
Yeah. Okay. We've already heard some great things, but do you have any books that maybe inspired you, or social media channels that you follow, or anywhere where people can get great advice about careers and also other things?
Well, I guess I would first plug Girls in Tech.
Okay, Girls in Tech.
We have an event coming up this fall. Actually, the New York chapter is organizing this event about career pivoting. So it's very similar to your topic, Tam.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to talk to some career professionals who have done a pivot in their career where they've learned something different and made that happen. I would also say if you reach out and volunteer for an organization that interests you, that would be an interesting way to find out more about a field without actually getting a job in that field. And you can meet people that way, and you can find out. For me, one of the biggest challenges when I was trying to move industries was, well, what kind of jobs are there? It wasn't even a question of what do I want to do. It was like I didn't know any of the jobs that were potential for me to apply to.
Yeah.
So by volunteering, I think that would be another way to find out a bit more about an industry.
Okay. Yeah, it makes total sense. I've never even thought about it, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the Girls in Tech, we will definitely link that in the comments. You guys can check that out. Maybe a take-home message as a final wrap-up. Like, do you have sort of one piece of advice for people who have just graduated or about to graduate?
Yeah, I think when I had just graduated, I was really worried about like the big plan. I really like to have something to shoot for so I can work towards it.
Mm-hmm.
And with more life experience, I think that I've realized that sometimes just taking one step forward, no matter what it is really helpful. And that's kind of what we need in the beginning. So I would just encourage new graduates to just do one thing and see where that takes you, meet new people. And I think that part of the big plan can be useful to kind of keep you motivated, but making steps, making real action towards what you want is sometimes more efficient and can help you realize that you might want something different. So I would just say, just to take one step forward, do one thing.
One thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's great advice. So we're kind of at the end already. It seemed to go by really fast. It always does. Denise, thank you so much for sharing your story and all this great advice. Everything we talked about will be linked in the description below, including Denise's LinkedIn profile, which I do recommend checking out. So you can follow her, and if she has more great recommendations, you'll be up to date. And if you'd like to hear more professionals talk about their not so obvious career paths, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Yeah, thanks for watching, and see you guys next time. Thanks again, Denise.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.